Here comes Steve Bannon. This is the guy who just was voted on as crustiest man in Trump's inner circle besides Trump.
Wow, Jamie. Here, I'll see you like a piece of that. That may work on Steve Bannon's podcast, but it won't work here. Benny Thompson and little Jamie Raskin. Okay, I got to bring in Congressman Matt Gaetz, who was having that throwdown. Congressman, first off, explain to our audience, in particular, we've got...
Explain to our audience how talking about it in Congress is a waste of time, but you have time to be here talking about it on the show, defending Bannon to his face.
Millions of the diaspora, the Chinese people. Where were you, and why is this so heated in these type of meetings? What was going on today, and why were you the tip of the spear in this fight?
Well, just the tip, but that's a whole other game, and he only plays that on flights, where they're transporting ecstasy and underage minors to and from Florida and Georgia.
So the Rules Committee is one of the most important committees in the Congress. They take the legislative questions and the action that's going to occur on the floor, and they package it up, and they the constraint around what can be discussed, what can be.
Yes, apparently the Rules Committee passed a new rule on how shitty the connection can be between Steve Bannon and his guests.
Voted on. And what we're seeing now in the Congress is it's Steve Bannon week. It's not the week to address their legislative goals or to address the economic crisis or the supply chain crisis.
You do realize there are other committees. This is the other thing that Republicans play all the time, that the January 6th committee is the only committee in existence, because they're going to pretend that all the other committees aren't meeting and dealing with normal stuff, and that the Democrats aren't meeting about the bills and crafting ways of squeezing the 3.5 into about 2 trillion. Who called it, by the way? Who called it? Who said it didn't matter if you voted before or after, it's going to get pared down? And everybody's like, if we make them vote for this first, then they'll never have time to pare it down. And the other people were like, we're not going to vote for that until you start paring this down. And then it got pared down. Like, this is so stupid.
Border, the fact that we have thousands of Afghan refugees coming in with little to no vetting. No. The real big issue that the Congress is going to now.
So you could put together a team to vet those people who are on military bases, for example, or waiting in Qatar and other places to get into the United States, and make sure that they're vetted, or go back over them. I mean, you and your staff could literally you could have spent the last month going over everyone who came in and their families and going, okay, who do we redline? Let's make a pile of everybody who is vetted clearly and who has worked with us, and a pile who has not. And we're going to go through all these folks, and then I'm going to need to call together my colleagues, and we're going to go to the floor and talk about, the military guys who have to clear these folks and how we're doing that and what the process is. I mean, that would be a functional use of your time. But instead, you bitch about Steve Bannon being a waste of time in the House Rules Committee, and then come on his show and bitch about how it's a waste of time there too.
On at least for a week is you, Steve, and this podcast. So in the Rules Committee, I was there alongside Jim Jordan to oppose sending a censure of you to the floor of the House of Representatives.
A censure? They're not censuring him, dumbass. He's violating a subpoena, and they're going through the process that you have to go through for him to have to honor that subpoena.
And I did that because we are in a very...
And I did that because if people find out who he talked to on that day, they'll realize that he talked to me and Jim Jordan, and that Jim Jordan has already lied to Congress. And we can't have that.
Time in America where criminal process is going to be used to settle political scores.
Well, this isn't a political score. I mean, you could argue that his own testimony in front of the House committee would settle a political score if indeed he had not engaged in anything illegal and had nothing to hide. I'm being silly.
The reason I know that's the case is because Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney gave away the game. Benny Thompson specifically talked about criminal referrals, and it makes you wonder, how is it that Benny Thompson is so sure that the Justice Department would take that up and do something with it? He's not talking about criminal referral.
Because the law is really clear. That's why he can be sure. Because the committee is a lawfully convened committee, and they have the right to subpoena people, and none of the people that they're subpoenaing have any of the legal protections they are using. None of it holds water. So the reason he knows this, and the process is they vote on it, then the House votes on it, then the DOJ acts on it. That's just because that's how the ladder is shaped.
In the abstract, it's because they have planned this out. It's precisely what.
Yes, they planned this even before the insurrection. They were always going to call Steve Bannon just because they wanted to be downwind from him.
Merrick Garland is coming to the Judiciary Committee tomorrow. The 1-2 punch here is do the Bannon votes, have the Bannon Rules Committee hearing, and then have Merrick Garland show up tomorrow in the Judiciary Committee and announce that he is prepared to use the Department of Justice against those who he thinks were advising the president regarding anything. And the reason that's so...
Well, no, obviously not regarding anything. And by the way, he didn't end up saying that. He said precisely that he would stand by the letter of the law. Which is, by the way, that a lawfully convened committee has subpoenaed someone. That person does not have the right to executive privilege because the White House itself has not exercised that right, and so therefore they could come down there if they don't want to incriminate themselves. They can bring a lawyer, and then they can just they don't even need a lawyer. They can just say, "I'm pleading the fifth."
Bizarre is that the FBI has already stated that there was no grand scheme to coordinate some violent insurrection.
Well, that they could find, because there's limitations on how far they can look without a congressionally convened committee.
By Donald Trump, you, or anyone else. So they've already shared the conclusion, but the Democrats need the process. I made the point in the Rules Committee.
You mean the legal process that is legal and a process? That you must go through the process that is legal.
Democrats had a reconciliation deal. If they had an infrastructure bill, there would be no talk of Steve Bannon this week.
Oh, no. Guess what? If they'd have solved these earlier, they'd be all in on this. This is all you would be hearing about. The Democrats would only be talking about dragging these assholes in front of them. If they'd nailed down the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill, and when they vote on it, by the way, you don't think the next thing is, as far as talking points, shitting on Meadows and everybody involved on January 5th? Are you kidding me?
Be focused on their agenda, but they need you, Steve. They need you because they don't have anything to actually deliver to.
They need you because they have too much soap.
Voters, and so they have to scare people, and my belief is that inspiration
and the best way to scare people is bring Steve Bannon somewhere.
Will certainly overwhelm this attempt at deception and division that we see from House Democrats.
You've had some pretty perceptive comments about where they stand in this legislation, both on the infrastructure, more importantly on the 3.5 trillion, how complicated
2 trillion
it is. And I think you've made the case that
it's still infrastructure week from Trump's term
didn't work for them. It worked against them, that they're ossified. Explain to this audience why they're so jammed up.
This is the whole thing. Like, say what you said again, but shorter, because I need to make 3 clips, and then it'll make them say one more sentence.
Spending all their time. For us, it's great. Every day we're just hammering. You're the first time we've ever had anybody here to talk about it, because we love the fact that they're over there spending time on this. We're hammering every day to.
Do you? Oh, just wait. If you love it, then show the fuck up.
To kill this illegitimate.
I don't have a haircut. My hair's back in a ponytail.
Regime in the crib, and I don't care if Benny Thompson and little Jimmy Raskin don't like that. That's our purpose, okay? Our purpose is opposition, and we're opposition to this radical regime. And every day we put up information. Hey, guess what? It's working, because you see the number.
Yeah, no, it isn't. This has nothing to do with what you do every day. Nobody gives a rat fuck. That's why this is all about the 5th and the 6th, and maybe part of the 4th of January. They don't give a shit about what you've been doing the rest of the time. Total waste of time, honestly. And the only reason they want Bannon is he is the low-hanging rotten fruit that leads to the fact that Trump was engaged in conversations on that day with people that were coordinating it.
Are cratering. But Congressman Gaetz, why is it, with everything, how complicated this legislation is, why is it doesn't seem like they're doing any work on it? Is that just a perception from the outside, or what's happening? Give us some inside baseball.
Well, Democrats are stuck in the mud because the organizing principle of the Democrat majorities that exist in Congress today are driven by solely one thing: opposition to Donald Trump.
Well, obviously not, because they passed the largest rescue package in American history. They passed the infrastructure bill, it went to the Senate, and now it's just going for the final vote in the House, which it will pass. And then that's just done. They didn't even do any material changes in it, so that'll go straight to the president's desk for signing as soon as they do it. The recon package will end up being about $2 trillion and will jumpstart some processes, but they're still doing that. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump at all.
As if there is some unifying ideology or some unifying promise that they made to their voters. They were simply just there to oppose Trump. Well, they're kind of like the dog that caught the car right now, because they have all of the levers of government at their disposal, but they don't know what to do with them. I mean, they have no bill. They have nothing to run on. They have nothing to say that they've done for the American people.
Well, we are out of Afghanistan, for the record. And we do have like 70% of Americans are vaccinated now, and there's a plan for children to get vaccinated as well, and that's working out. And of course, there is an infrastructure bill that's passed the Senate with 17 votes that will just need one final vote in the House, and then it'll get signed. And then, of course, the reconciliation bill has a lot of great stuff in it, and it's going to end up being, like I said, around a little under $2 trillion for that, but it'll get passed as well. And then by Christmas, you guys will be going, it's a war on Christmas.
You know what? This has got a kind of interesting, like 2004 Bush-Cheney energy to it. Remember at the time, George Bush had like the No Child Left Behind bill that was wildly unpopular with both parties. And so they ran after 9/11, not on legislative activity for the people, but they ran to scare people. That like John Kerry was like super scary, and actually he probably was. And so that was probably a good decision. But
so it's a great conversation. You guys understand what he's saying.
Voters, but that same pattern recognition, that Bush-Cheney really imperative to...
Yes. Biden Harris are the Bush-Cheney of free college tuition, community college tuition.
Away from governance and toward frightening people is now what you see kind of Cheney and the other Democrats doing.
Yes, and that is a good question, chat room. How does Matt Gaetz feel about leaving children behind? Obviously, he believes in flying them across state lines. In some cases, allegedly.
And it's quite something that they think that, like, to save democracy, they have to, advance these criminal contempt endeavors. They have to move.
Well, they don't have to do it. It's required. These guys, the guy you're talking to could actually just go down there and fucking talk. If he's got something to say, and he's not afraid to say it. I mean, the under oath thing, that's probably the problem, isn't it? It's the whole under oath thing. Yeah.
Toward these.
He's not, just to clarify, Steve Bannon's not under oath when he does this show. Should I feel like I should go under oath when I begin my show, I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Also comedy.
Referrals. And a real important constitutional question is whether or not developing a criminal referral is a proper function for a standing or even a select legislative committee.
Well, yeah. Because it's a legally convened committee that has subpoena power, and the subpoenas are being ignored.
Congress is constrained by its legislative powers and its powers of oversight. And of course, if we come across people that commit crimes, we send referrals. I've done plenty of that to the Jeff Sessions Justice Department that was sort of asleep at the wheel. But the whole purpose...
Yeah, who picked that guy? Whoever hired that asshole just can't... He's like, I don't know who that guy was, but he clearly does not know the best people.
Of the January 6th committee is to engage in criminal referrals against people they don't like. And if you're watching this podcast...
Well, in all fairness, no one likes Steve Bannon. Like, nobody. The only ways you can tell Steve Bannon is not insane is that Steve Bannon doesn't like Steve Bannon.
You think, well, maybe they come for Meadows or Bannon or, people that are well known like Kevin McCarthy or Matt Gaetz or Jim Jordan. Maybe.
Yeah, but then it's a slippery slope to them just like snatching up maggots off the street and making them testify against their will about how they felt about the 6th.
Going to be safe, but the tell that they're coming after regular folks is the IRS rule that they plan to enact,
which they aren't enacting and has nothing to do with this.
Where every transaction over $600 now is subject to federal scrutiny. So you
No. A bank had under that original rule was that any bank that had more than $600 worth of activity in it had to be, they had to make the IRS aware of it. Not every transaction, $600. Just the fact that an account had more than that. Now it's at $10,000.
talk about our role as the opposition pushing back. It's always important to recognize what the opposition or what the government.
By the way, was your concern, Matt, that some of your Venmo activity was around $600? Is that the issue? That's the issue, isn't it? That's it.
Fact doing right now, and they're trying to chew up dissenters with criminal process.
Well, first of all, Steve Bannon already looks chewed up.
You mentioned, and you're a lawyer, so your language is very precise. You said Cheney and other Democrats. What do you mean by that? I heard she went off on leadership today. Can you explain what happened?
Well, I mean, look, Liz Cheney is acting in concert with Benny Thompson and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi.
And the law.
On all these matters. And frankly,
and the Constitution.
Travesty that we haven't kicked her out of the Republican conference right alongside her little buddy Adam Kinzinger, because
the Biden town hall is starting. Okay, well, understood. If you want to jump over to that, I completely understand. I won't go to it because it's CNN. If you guys want to watch it later, I will. I have a couple of other stories that I want to do, and I'll keep it tight tonight because I started later, and also Summer and I are going to a football game.
They are literally scheming to try to put preservation demands on the phone records of colleagues, and really to,
just colleagues, just anybody's. Your grandmother and I was colleagues. Next thing you know, he's on top of me in woodshed, pumping and a sweating. Anybody know what movie that's from? So it's just because people are colleagues. Because technically speaking, Liz Cheney is a colleague of yours. She's a Republican. She's in the House. She's part of the Republican House. So that would make her a colleague of yours. Although they don't seem to be looking into her records because she didn't get phone calls from Trump on the day or lie about it like Jim Jordan did.
Really to try to, I think, weaponize the Congress and law enforcement against those they don't agree with politically. So, Liz Cheney can't go back to Wyoming because she's not very popular there at all.
And you can't go back to Wyoming because everybody there hates you. And I think any city in Wyoming is technically 500 yards from a school.
And so she's seeking to become this kind of this mythological creature of the Beltway, and it was quite stunning to see the Democrats just fawning all over her. But for the
out of just amazement that any Republicans actually stick to the Constitution at all.
Purpose of this review, we have to look at what their true objective is. It's to distract from their failures. It's to draw our eyes away from the fact that they can't even bring the far left together with the farther left. And it's also to try to
the far left and the farther left. I see everybody who's left of I guess Liz Cheney's dad is far left, or a lefty left, far lefty left.
Mere people who were engaged in promoting the America First agenda, because the big fear for Liz Cheney and the other Democrats is that our America First principles will remain the guiding principles of the Republican Party, because if
which is what? Oh, yes. Like any negotiation you engage in, the first bargaining chip you will use is America. That's what America First means, by the way, in case you ever hear them say that. What they mean by America First is anytime we need to sell something or destroy something to have our way, the first thing we're going to sell or destroy is America. That's America First. What's first on the chopping block, according to Matt Gaetz and his crew? America.
Republican Party goes back to the establishment, Democrats will be ruling forever because we'll have nothing to inspire our voters. We have to make
Yes, we must inspire them by destroying our democracy. Nothing is more inspirational than the destruction of our own country.
An America First focus. That's what you and I fight for. That's what Jim Jordan fights for. And it's one of the reasons we get targeted.
And you're going to be fighting over soap soon.
I want to go about Merrick Garland. Give our audience some inside baseball. You're saying the Attorney General is coming up tomorrow, and you've said for a while this is all a setup. They'll do the committee one night, the rules the next after.
It's not a set. It's the process. It's actually how it works when you have a functioning government. This is the rules.
Bring the AG up and then have the vote in the House. Walk us through why was he coming up to Capitol Hill? What was he supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
To talk about this particular thing and to talk about the Justice Department.
Garland's appearance before the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow has been purposefully synced with the actions that you saw in the Rules Committee today and the votes that will occur to hold you in contempt of.
Which, by the way, he didn't say what Matt Gaetz said he was going to say, just for the record. Hey, hello, Australia. Hi, Carrie.
That is all being stitched together because they're trying to create a wholly enclosed ecosystem of the political persecution in the Congress.
Yes, they're trying to establish these things as self-evident that all men are created equal, and it's almost like they're having a constitutional cage they're putting all their
and the enforcement tools of the Department of Justice. I've often said one of the scariest things that I've observed is that the FBI really has become the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party in a lot of circumstances. I mean, heck.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like, or you could read it as the Republican Party has gone so far off the deep end that they are in violation of federal laws so frequently that even if the Democrats didn't want the FBI to go after them, they would have a legal obligation to do so because it's often, as I've said, the Republican Party itself is a criminal organization.
Called me crazy when I said the FBI was out to get Trump, and now you have the evidence that an FBI lawyer changed email contents before a secret court in order to gain authorities that wouldn't otherwise exist against,
which actually let Carter Page off the hook.
People that might have been in the orbit of the former president. So
people who might have been in the orbit of the former president. Carter Page, the single dumbest person working in the Trump orbit, and the changes made in that FISA warrant actually made it less likely that they would continue his warrant and his surveillance warrant, and yet they still did.
That is really the fully enclosed ecosystem. Have Congress send out these subpoenas and engage in this investigative work, but the framers never gave Congress the ability to actually go and prosecute people or throw people behind bars, and probably thank goodness they didn't. And so now that unity,
or you guys would have done it a long time ago with like racial activists and women's rights activists.
Purpose with Benny Thompson and the Justice Department is frankly very different than what you saw when Republicans held control. I mean, when we had the levers of power, when you were sitting in the White House,
we did fuck all with it. We tried, but we didn't know how things worked.
I was on the majority in the Judiciary Committee. We had a justice.
Well, technically, Mark, yes, Junior, Don Jr. is a moron, but Carter Page was effectively involved in the actual administrative acts that was going on for a time, anyways, at least during the transition. That's what I was talking about. Don Jr. was supposed to be outside of that, even though he wasn't. But point taken.
That was very recalcitrant, that was resistant to any referrals or any information that we would provide them, because Jeff Sessions went over there and got Stockholm Syndrome, became sympathetic with his captors at the Justice Department. Now,
or decided to follow the law, which I know sounds awful.
You have is Merrick Garland, possibly an axe to grind vis-a-vis what went on with McConnell and the Supreme.
Why? Why would he have an axe to grind? What would be the problem there? I can't imagine. Whatever did the Republicans do to Merrick Garland's career that would make, obviously, no harm, no foul. It's a natural thing.
And I believe that Benny Thompson's proclamations of criminal referrals demonstrate true foreshadowing of what's to come, and that Benny Thompson already knows today how those criminal referrals will be received.
Well, because they fashion them based on the law, and they know that the law will actually stand up to scrutiny. So they will give it to Merrick Garland, and he will look at it in terms of the law, and it will stand up to constitutional muster, and there are no protections given by the White House. So yeah, he knows they'll work. Unlike Trump, who would sign executive orders and they filled in the details later.
Between Benny Thompson
and they were still not functional. They still didn't, even though they were supposed to fill in the details later, they still didn't actually do anything.
and the Justice Department, certainly something we're going to want to review in the coming days and weeks.
Did you think
Review? Oh, you mean come on Steve Bannon's waste of time?
Biden gave the game away when he was on the lawn and interviewed and said, yeah, they ought to be prosecuted? Do you think he'd already worked through this?
Well, he could look at what happened and then he knows the law, and he's been in the Senate and in the House. So he knows the law. Yes.
What you're implying?
Well, Biden is gaslighting the Justice Department, right? Because now it's far more difficult for the Justice Department to throw its hands in the air and say, this is all a political squabble, which actually is what it is, because Biden is out there gaslighting.
Well, how? I mean, they're just being called as witnesses. How are they being gaslit? It's easy to show up and, I've often said, the movie Gaslight itself would have been ruined by a neighbor who gave a shit.
Them to engage in
anybody, if they were actually able to talk to someone and go, I think my husband's trying to drive me insane by saying things are happening that aren't. Really? Okay. Well, I'll pay attention. Thanks very much. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Let's call the cops.
criminal process.
Congressman Gaetz, you got this podcast on fire. Go through all the information. How do people follow you on social media?
Yeah, sell it, baby, sell it.
How did he get to this podcast that's produced by the former producer?
Did he just say fuck all? Did I not hear that? What?
The War Room.
Yeah.
Vish.
Or he just in general said fuck all, right?
We are very lucky to have some of the War Room's best come and work on my congressional staff.
Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, what? Sorry, you who?
Former producer of the War Room, Vish.
We are very lucky to have some of the War Room's best come and work on my congressional staff. What I can tell you is our podcast is called Firebrand. It's released every.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Once we get Steve Bannon's phone records. Well, shit. That is a new detail. That's fascinating to me. That the one of the people who worked on Steve Bannon's War Room works either on his podcast with and around his staff in regard to the podcast itself, or just as a general staff member, which is a huge fucking giveaway, and also explains a lot why Matt Gaetz gives so much of a shit about protecting Steve Bannon, because he is, as he always is, protecting himself. Holy shit. Did you guys know that up until now? Like, I don't normally watch this shit. We just found out live, essentially, that one of his staffers who works on his podcast, and in his staff in general, I guess, they're worked on Steve Bannon's podcast on the War Room, and they are interlinked. Holy shit. It explains so much. Talk about gaslighting. The whole essence of this, and that bullshit gathering when he was talking earlier, on the thing he posted on his own site, was this idea that this is a waste of time. This is just, we're wasting the people's time and Congress's time. This is nothing. This is a nothing burger. We're just using this. This is a political axe to grind, and you're attacking this poor person. And by attacking Steve Bannon, you're telling everybody that you could attack anyone in the entire country. Everybody's up for grabs in this situation. Meanwhile, at the tail end of this bullshit, we find out that this fucker hired someone who used to work for this fucker probably around the time that January 5th and 6th was happening. So there's an overlap in conversation. So when he's protecting Steve Bannon from having to come and testify, he's got skin in the game even further than we thought. mean, beyond the fact that this, he's been kissing Trump's ass and he's been protecting the January 6th insurrectionists in general, we now know that these dudes are permanently leg wrestling. They are asexually reproducing worms sucking on each other's ends. Fucking hell. Listen to that again, real quick. Run that by me again, dipshit.
To throw its hands in the air and say, this is all a political squabble, which actually...
All a political squabble. Remember that. This is all just politics. He's just here to talk about politics.
What it is, because Biden is out there gaslighting them to engage in criminal process.
He's gaslighting them to get them to engage in criminal process. Just gaslighting them. Biden is which, by the way, this makes no fucking sense whatsoever. There's no gaslighting in this at all. But okay.
Congressman Gaetz, you got this podcast on fire. Go through all the information. How do people follow you on social media? How do they get to this podcast that's produced by the former producer of the War Room, Vish?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Who Vish somebody?
We are very lucky to have some of the War Room's best come and work on my congressional staff. What I can tell you is...
All right. So not only is his podcast produced by a former podcast producer on there, who's obviously all in together, but other members now. This isn't just that dude. Multiple people who have worked on Steve Bannon's, War Room have come to work on Gaetz's staff.
Podcast is called...
Which sounds fucking disgusting. I'm sorry for saying Matt Gaetz's staff.
Firebrand. It's released every Thursday morning. The way that most folks enjoy it is on Rumble, so make sure you get on Rumble so that you can...
Enjoy it? The way they enjoy it?
That. And, the one thing I regret, Steve, is that I lamented to my Democrat colleagues in committee today, for most Americans, one of the first 100 things they think of when they wake up in the morning probably isn't Steve Bannon and the War Room podcast. People are probably thinking about their kids, their future, their jobs, their security.
Yeah, most of us also don't wake up every morning thinking about like robberies and assaults and car thefts and shit like that. That's why we have cops. Those folks get up every morning and they deal with that stuff. So we can get up and deal with our own lives. And in this particular case, Congress is acting as a cop around our democracy, so we don't have to wake up every morning and write a fucking letter every time.
And when I got back to my office, I had a lot of furrowed brows and scowls from my staff because, in fact, Steve Bannon's War Room podcast is one of the first 100 things that many of them think of when they get up in the morning. But my podcast...
Right, because you guys are forever linked, and this is absolutely a conspiracy.
This Firebrand, it's a great way to get yourself geared up for Thursday's War Room.
Congressman, thank you very much. And by the way, it was incredibly entertaining seeing you taking on little Jamie Raskin today. Very, very, very.
No, it wasn't. It was dull, quite frankly. But that's interesting to me. Hang on one second. So let's see. What's on here? Firebrand. Is that the name of his fucking... Oh, my God. Look at this bullshit. Episode 9, January 6th. This is September 3rd. Okay, when's this? These are and he posted this clip on his own thing. The weaponized DOJ. How are we going to enjoy this? DOJ refuses to arrest man who traveled D.C. to kill Matt Gaetz. Oh, that's... By the way, did you guys see this part? When he went to the floor and said... Somebody's trying to kill me.
I thank the gentleman for yielding because I think someone may be trying to kill me. And if they...
Let me guess. The father of a 17-year-old girl. No? All right.
Successful, I would like my constituents and my family...
Was fuck stain taken. Yeah, he wanted that one, but he had to stick with Firebrand.
To know who stopped their...
By the way, is there a liquid brand? All right.
Madam Speaker, on October 8th, 2021, a Twitter handle styled CIA Bob is at your door tweeted to...
At CIA Bob is at your door? So it's a little belabored, isn't it? All right.
At Rep Matt Gaetz. Looky here, pal. I lived in Portland. Portland has ordered a hit on you. I accepted the contract. Have a good day. Following.
For the record, by the way, if Portland orders a hit on you, it's a delivery of donuts. I'm just saying. They come over. The most violent thing they do to you is rub granola in your crack. It's rude, but it's all organic, and unless you have an allergy, you're fine.
Tweet: this individual traveled to Washington, D.C., and the Capitol Police.
By the way, in a diesel van that smelled like French fries.
Recommended his arrest. That's information that was just shared with me by the Investigations and Threat Assessment section of the Protective Services Bureau, and specifically George DeCesso. And George shared
of the Capitol Police, who you were arguing should not have an intelligence service in its protection of Congress people, because he was one of the fuckers who went to the floor who said, why are they expanding the Capitol Police to other areas? This is clearly governmental overreach.
Me that the Capitol Police recommended the arrest of this individual, and that the Department of Justice refused to do so, declined to do so. And on the eve of the Attorney General testifying before the Judiciary Committee tomorrow.
Just so sad. The nerve. Let's see. CIA Bob is at your door. Let's see. Well, he did have his account suspended, so there's that. But if you look at this stuff, it says, latest tweets from CIA Bob, I fight evil daily. That's what he said. Matt Gaetz revealed his death threat. This is on Reddit. DOJ allegedly refused to arrest maniac who traveled to D.C. A maniac who fights evil daily. He's even more nuts. The thing, man travels from... Okay. Noledia? All right. Man travels from Portland to kill Matt Gaetz. DOJ yawns. Okay. Gaetz floors me. Somebody may be trying to kill me. Reveals how threat on his life was ignored by the DOJ. Is this it? Is this the dude? Images here. This is CIA Bob is at your door. He's a very scary dude. Is that it? These are the three pictures. This is the guy. And that'll be suspended. Still saying suspended account. Learn more. Okay, that's not happening. Okay. Nope. So that's CIA Bob, by the way, who is fighting evil daily. Let's see. That's House Biden. Okay, hold on. Let's see. We go back. Joe, my God, LGBT ability to Madam Speaker, and the Twitter handle style. Believe it. Look here, pal. I live in Portland. Someone may be trying to kill me. Let's see. This is the. I say DOJ. Okay, this is AM Greatness. Allegedly refused to arrest maniac who traveled to D.C. Well, alleged maniac, for the record, who traveled to D.C. to allegedly kill Matt Gaetz after the Capitol Police allegedly recommended it. A deranged lefty, allegedly, traveled to D.C. after stating his desire on social media to kill Matt Gaetz after the Capitol Police recommended he be arrested. The Biden Justice Department refused to do so. Gaetz alleged on the House floor on Wednesday. So all of this previous stuff is alleged. I think somebody may be trying to kill me. This is the one. Look, here, pal. I live in Portland. Portland is ordered. I accept the contract. Have a good day. And this is the picture that he was that a GIF? Which GIF is that? The individual also tweeted that he planned to wipe Gaetz off the surface of the earth. I'm going to wipe you off the surface of the earth. Have a good day. And then a clapping thing. Subsequent tweets said, you will meet me, run and hide. Last rites are according to me. Tag Gaetz in a tweet. By the way, I don't support violence or threats to violence at all. For the record, Twitter suspended his account Thursday morning for violating the platform's rules. That is a picture. Gaetz said the following threatening tweets. The congressman said he's learned from the investigation threat assessment that he's going to go to George DeCesso. He explained that he told him the Capitol Police recommended the arrest. Is yet another example of the DOJ having a double standard. This is this part. Just a little over 4 years ago, remember, left-wing activist from Belleville, shooting there, blah, blah, blah. James Hodgkins shot U.S. Majority Whip Steve Scalise and Crystal Griner. Agreed. But okay, so this guy, and curiously enough, the DOJ wouldn't be responsible for this thing. Obviously, if the threats are direct, I mean, I guess the FBI, or they would refer it to the FBI, or you call the FBI, or the DOJ wouldn't. I don't know what step he's missing.
It is just yet another example of the Department of Justice having a double standard. If my name weren't Gaetz, if it were Omar or Tlaib, you bet this person would have been arrested.
Yeah, because they never received death threats that aren't followed up.
That's what the Capitol Police recommended, but the Department of Justice doesn't seem to care so much when it's Republicans.
That's it. That's the whole thing. That's everything, by the way. And this is the other clip here or whatever. We'll dig into some of this stuff because I have no idea. Is this just audio? Hold on.
Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz was one of the very few members in the entire Congress who bothered to stand up against permanent Washington on behalf of his constituents.
Matt Gaetz right now, he's a problem for the Democratic Party, and he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him.
If you stand for the flag and kneel in prayer, if you want to build America up and not burn her to the ground, then welcome, my fellow patriots. You are in the right place. This is the movement for you.
You ever watch this guy on television?
Ew. You couldn't find what a dick move to get a picture of yourself where you've obviously fixed this part of your jaw to make it look more striking. That's a little bit of Photoshop. But what'd you do? Add that to Trump's face? Jesus Christ, he looks like he's melting.
Like a machine, Matt Gaetz.
I'm a handsome man in some corners.
All right, whatever. Yeah. Okay, so he does do it. It is on camera.
Many others.
In everything but these militia groups that he pretends.
And we're not. We'll go through. We'll pick one of these someday. But I mean, it's obviously this is just basically Steve Bannon's podcast, his Warroom podcast, with a little bit of gel added to it.